Hey guys, this video is brought to you by World of Warships. It's a free-to-play PC game, and it offers the perfect balance of action and strategy. You can command a naval fleet featuring some of history's most iconic war vessels, including the USS Indianapolis, and you can unlock ships and dominate the ocean. You can even invite your friends to join you and receive unique items and cashback bonuses. If you guys check out that promo code at the bottom of the screen, Battle Stations 2020, you can get 250 doubloons, 3 days premium account, 1,000,000 credits, and 1 premium ship, which is the USS Charleston, plus you get 1 port slot. This game has great reviews from multiple sources. Be sure to click on the link in the description tab below to start playing today. Hey guys, what up? Good evening. So in this video, what we're going to be looking at is how to build a 2D game in Unity. And this is going to be part 1 of a multi-video series, but just in this video alone, I'm going to show you guys how to create some actual graphics, like your own custom graphics, and build your own 2D Unity game using something called a tile map. So there's a few tools that you need to have in order to get started with this. For starters, I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code in order to do my code editing. I'm going to use Unity Engine, obviously, since that's what this is about. And this is a free game engine that you guys can download. It uses C#, so that's what we're going to be writing with. And then we're also going to be using Adobe Illustrator. Now, this graphics software is not free, so for other people that don't have this, you could use GIMP. And there's like some for the Mac. I forget the name of it. But anyway, any sort of graphics editor, but I recommend Adobe Illustrator. I just think it's pretty awesome. But anyway, I'll have links to that in the description tab below if you guys are interested. All right, so after you have all that stuff installed, what we're going to do is go ahead and launch the Unity editor and create our first project. So this is using Unity, I believe it's 2019 version, 2019.2. I think there's a 2019.3 out right now, but for right now, this should work just the same with 2019.3. So let's go ahead and create a new project, and we're going to select 2D. And we're just going to call this tutorial as the name of the project. And then it asks you to put the project in a folder. You could choose whatever folder you want to keep track of it. And then I'm going to press create. Now with Unity, I'm going to kind of move along a lot because it's a relatively complex editor. And hopefully you guys can use this video just as a reference and just kind of pause it. And hopefully somebody can help with like a timestamp later on, or maybe I can do that myself. But ultimately, I expect this to be somewhat difficult to follow because this kind of thing is not really catered towards beginners, although like even with no programming knowledge, you should be able to follow along if you have all the tools that you need. All right, so just a quick overview. When you have the Unity engine open, there's going to be a lot going on here. You have your scene view, your game view, which is what you're going to see when you actually run the game. The asset store is where you can download different assets and things that you use. Assets themselves are, it's going to create an asset folder for you in your project root directory. But that's where all your artwork's going to go. It's where your scenes go. Games consist of multiple scenes. You can think of like any level on Mario as its own scene. And every scene is going to have some sort of camera. So if we click on the camera in this Explorer on the left-hand side, it's going to show you the actual camera view that you have. And since it's a 2D game, we don't have to worry about really too much complicated camera movement at this point. But yeah, so right now, let's just go ahead and just keep the camera settings where they are. All right, so the first thing what we're going to do is we're going to create a game object. And since this is a 2D game, we're going to go under 2D object. And there's an option for tile map. And this is a relatively new feature of Unity. And it makes things so much easier to work with. But what this does, it's going to create a parent component for you, which is called the grid. And then the tile map is underneath that. And you can see it's kind of blocky based. And what we're going to do is we're going to create graphics using our Illustrator. We're going to create pixelized graphics. That is going to create like the landscape that we're going to use as the background. And that's going to be our actual tile map. So let me give you a visual image of a tile map. So you can see if I do a quick Google search on tile map in Unity, you get all these different examples of what a tile map can be. Now you can make your game in this view. I forget the name of it at this point, but We're going to be looking at more of a just a head-on kind of tile map. It's going to be more of a side scroller 2D game, but you have a lot of flexibility with the tile map and how you create it. But we're going to go with more of a basic example that looks something like this. Now you might be wondering what type of games actually use tile maps, and one of the most popular is Terraria, which it's been out for several years now, but it's a very popular game. The creators made a lot of money on that. All right, now Unity has a built-in tool these days to make it a lot easier to draw your actual tile maps out. And in order to view that, what we're going to do is go to Window and then go to 2D, and then you can see Tile Palette. And this is going to pull up this this window here that you want to import your graphics into. So what we're going to do is under our assets, we're going to create a folder. So let's go to create, and we're going to create a folder, and we're just going to call this the art. I wish I could make the font bigger for you guys, but I really can't. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go into Adobe Illustrator, and what we want to do is create an image that we're going to use for our background. And this is going to be, it needs to be something that's like a perfect square. So we're going to just go 64 by 64 pixels. And what we're doing is we're going to design one simple tile, because the game is going to consist of a lot of different tiles, but we're going to go ahead and just create the first one for right now. Now, your Illustrator by default should have this line segment tool, but if you click and hold down, there's a rectangular grid tool. And then if I just double click on that, it's going to give some options here. So what we want to do is change this to the height and width to match our tile that we're creating. And then here what we can do is we can give it the amount of dividers that we want, like horizontal and vertical dividers, but I'm going to go with 20 because it's going to be relatively blocky graphics. And what I can do is just click and drag now, and this creates this big block type segment here. I'm going to do that over. I'm going to press Control Z. That's the line's just too big there. So let's go ahead and Control Z to back up. And we're going to double click on this. I'm going to say, you know what, I just want 5 by 5. All right. And now we click this in. And these are going to be relatively terrible graphics here, but let's go ahead and now go to the Live Paint tool. So if we press K, it's going to turn it into this Live Paint tool, and then we can select a color that we want to use. And I'm going to create like a grassy like hill. So we're going to have some grass here, and we'll probably have 2 layers of that. And then now we need to go ahead and put some dirt behind it. So let's go ahead and add that. All right, now with the paint tool selected, let's go ahead and just right click, and what we're going to say is ungroup, and make sure all of it's selected actually. So select this, make sure all these grid options are selected. We're going to right click and then just say yeah, it's already ungrouped. Okay, we're good there. All right, so now with all that selected, what we want to do is go to Object and then go to Live Paint, and then we're going to say Expand, and this just helps as you get more complicated graphics, then it helps make the edges smoother. Now you want to have your window option open, and what we're going to make sure you have your Pathfinder selected. And you can see because I have it selected, it's over here on my right hand side. But with all this stuff selected, we now want to say divide. Where is it at? Divide right there. All right. So now what I can do, because I've divided it, I've kept this graphics in place, and I can use my magic wand tool to select these grid options and then just hit delete and get rid of that. You can see it gets rid of all the lines and everything. And then I'm just going to adjust this inside the image. And let's go ahead and just save this. So we're going to save it for the web. And we want to make sure it's a PNG so it has a transparent background. So you might have an option, it might be on JPEG by default, but we want the PNG to be selected. And then we're going to click Save. All right, so now what we need to do is just find where our project is located. So I have mine in a Unity folder, and I have it inside the tutorial. And we're going to put it in the assets and inside the art folder. So we're going to save that here. We're just going to call this hill. And now we have our hill object. All right, so now let's go ahead and create. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to create a new one. And we want, we already have our grid selected and everything here, so it's, we don't have to adjust that again. But here, let's go ahead and just make the flat ground. So I'm gonna grab this green color, press K for live paint, and then I can select all this at the same time if I had it actually on the fill like I wanted. So I can grab all that and just paint the ground here. Again, we're going to right click and we're going to ungroup, and then we're going to go to object and live paint, expand it, and then we're going to divide it. Use the magic wand to select the stuff that we don't want, grab it, adjust it. And you have to do some slight adjustments there because of the fact that we had our line segments so big. And really it's because we're editing such a small tile. Like mostly, if you want some more detail on your graphics, you're going to want to have smaller paths, larger image, and you could also change the line of the square to be a little bit thinner, so it doesn't have to be adjusted as much. But anyway, now we have our ground. And then finally, let's go ahead and I want to have some dirt, which is going to be behind the hill. So we're going to create one more. But in this time, we're just simply going to fill it in and make it all brown. So I can just use my rectangle and grab it bigger than the actual artboard there. And then I can use my fill tool here, and we're just going to make it that dark brown color. So we're going to save this and save it as our, we'll call it dirt. All right, so now we have these three options, or really three images. So if I click on the art, we can see that they're all in here now. And I can drag them into, well, first I have to create a new palette, my bad. So we're going to call this our background. We'll just call it background, that's fine. All right, so it's going to ask you to save it, and we're just going to put it in the art folder, that's fine. All right, so now we have this palette, so I can go ahead and start dragging these items into the palette. And every time you do that, you do have to save it as an asset. So we're going to save, and you can see we have our dirt there. Drag in the ground, save it, and then drag in the hill and save. All right, so now that we've done that, we can now use these tools inside Unity to then draw our background. So if I just want to select individual ones, I can do that here. If you want to start painting with whatever you have selected, then you're going to use this little paint option, and then you can see here I can go ahead and start drawing out my level. So I'm going to, I didn't want to do that. Let me go ahead and zoom this in. If you want to zoom this in, you can scroll the mouse wheel within Unity. And really we have some issues here on our actual grid. You can kind of get the point here. So the graphics are going to be bad. Like we can adjust this later on, but for right now, this is just like a demo. I'm going to show you guys, and then we're going to have our ground down here. If you want to pan, you just hold the middle mouse wheel in. All right, now let's go ahead and just take a look at the game view. So you can see it's got really terrible graphics here. And if we want to play the game, you can just click play. All right, so now if I want to make these grids smaller to make all these segments go together, what I can do is make sure you have your grid selected, and then there's this cell size here. So we want to make it half of what it is right now, so just say 0.5 instead of 1. And now you can see it's much better looking, although the camera obviously needs to be zoomed in. So now what we can do is we can adjust the camera and make it much smaller to our game. You got a little dirt. There, I think, what is that? Is that a bug in my hill? No. All right. Well, we got something shining through there with the dirt. Not sure what that is. Ain't worried about it. It's actually, where is that coming from? Interesting. Yeah, we're not gonna worry about that right now. All right, so now that we have our hill, let's go ahead and create a new image. And we're going to make this 512 by 512 because we need a little bit more room to work with. And what we're going to do is create a sprite sheet that allows for animations for our characters that we're using. I'm going to use the same method of the grid tool, but I want my dividers 20 by 20 since we have more room to work with. And here, let's go ahead and press K again for the live paint. And we're just going to make our character very, very basic. So let's go ahead and make his head. He's just going to be like a very basic character. All right, so that's the first one. And then what we can do is just go ahead and create another identical one. And then we're going to make his feet just going to go inwards. So his feet are going to kind of go inwards and outwards, and then his hands are going to go up and down. All right, so we've created two images here. Again, let's go ahead and right click, and we're going to say ungroup. Not ungroup, I didn't mean to do that. Control Z to do that. Actually, shit, I did mean to ungroup, my bad. All right, and then we're going to go into Object, Live Paint, Expand, and then again do our divider. And now we're going to select our magic wand again. Select all these white boxes, delete them, and now we have our little sprite sheet. All right, now if we press V within Illustrator or just click this black arrow selection tool, we're going to see that if we click and drag that both of these are like grouped together. What I want to do is have some good separation, so I'm going to ungroup those guys. And now I can just select this group and just make sure it's like properly separated so that we have enough space to slice it within the Unity editor. All right, so now that we've done that, I'm going to group that guy back, and I'm going to group all these guys together in case I have to edit this later. It's always a good idea to save your Illustrator file as a .ai file, so that way you can edit it within Illustrator later on. But once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and export it as a PNG. So we'll save for the web. And we're going to call this Sprite Sheet. All right, so now within Unity, we have the sprite, little sprite down here within our assets art folder. And what I want to do is have that selected, and then on the right-hand side here, there's going to be this sprite mode. We're going to change that to multiple, and then we have this option for a sprite editor. So that's going to launch our sprite editor tool, and we want to go ahead and click apply. And now this gives us the option to go ahead and just slice out the elements that we need. So here's going to be our first guy, and we're going to click we'll click trim, so it trims it and goes around the edge here. And then we're going to just say slice it. All right, and click apply. Let's see what that looks like. All right, so now you can see that it is in two separate images here. So let's go ahead and close the editor. And what I want to do is select both of these images here, and I'm going to drag them into my Project Explorer here, my Unity Explorer here. And what this is going to do, it's going to automatically create an animation. So we're just going to call this character animation. And then by default, this is going to just go ahead and it's going to play. So if we go ahead and play it, it's going to play the animation back and forth. Now we can slow that down, but I'm not going to touch on that right now. All right, so because this character is going to move around and he's really big, let's go ahead and make him a little smaller here. And again, if you want to get a look at the game of what he looks like, that you can just click on the game tab. But now he's a little bit smaller. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and add a component to him, and he's going to be, it's going to be a rigid body 2D, so that way we can control him. And you're going to see by default gravity is going to affect him. He's going to fall to the ground as soon as we play the game. So you could change it from dynamic to kinematic, and he won't fall. However, we want to have collision detection from within our little mountain here. So we're going to change all that. But for right now, let's go ahead and do kinematic so he doesn't fall. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and add a script so that we can control his movements. And we have to do that manually. So what we're going to do is say new script. And here is where you're going to go ahead and name it. So we're just going to call it character controller. And I'm going to press enter. All right, there it goes. All right, so now if I double click on the character controller, it should automatically open it. Okay, let's just right click and edit script. All right, that's going to open up Visual Studio Code. And now we have within our scenes, we have this character controller. And I'll make this a little bigger for you guys. And I'm going to close down that. All right, so basically all elements that you're going to add to your game, you know, if it's something that moves around, whether it's a bullet that's fired, whether it's like an explosion that occurs, your character that moves around, the enemies that try to kill him, all that stuff is going to be having, you have to edit it within your script. And the way game engines work is you have a start method, and this is specific to Unity, but all the game engines are pretty much the same. And then they have this this render loop, and it's just basically, it's like a for statement, like a for each or a for loop. It's just rendering over and over again as fast as the graphics card can process things. And we typically see things at like 60 frames a second, so you can pretty much imagine that update is being called at least 60 times a second, which is pretty fast. The start method is only going to be called one time. So when the scene loads and you're loading an object, in this case, this is the character, we're going to do any sort of instantiation that needs to occur with that character within this, this start method. And for any non-programmers that end up seeing this video, instantiation just means like it's a startup, just your startup method, you do it one time. Just like starting your car, some certain things get fired throughout your vehicle that don't continue to be fired after it's started. All right, so for starters here, what we're going to do is I'm going to delete this comment. And at the top here, we're going to go ahead and create a private variable. And because we're writing C#, C# has something that is called like their access modifiers is what they're called. And an access modifier just means that there are certain properties or methods on classes that can not be executed from other classes within your program. So C# and Java, it's all about making your program as secure as possible. So you can put these access modifiers to say, hey, this private method that we're declaring right now can only be accessed from within this class, which is the character controller class. And in hindsight, I probably should have named it in Pascal casing instead of having that underscore, but meaning this name here, I would much rather have it just be like that. That's typical C#. For right now, we don't have it that way. So anyway, let's go ahead. It's not going to affect anything within Unity, but let's go ahead and create our, in fact, it might affect it, but hopefully not. Let's just go ahead and continue to plow forward here. So what we're going to do is when you declare a property or a method within C#, you have to actually declare what that method is going to return and or what type of property, what type this is. So what we're saying is that we're declaring a variable that's a rigid body 2D, which we attach to our game character object. That's what made him fall through the floor. When we attach that, because he now reacts to gravity, and we want the rigid body, I have IntelliSense, it's automatically filling this in for some reason. We want our rigid body variable to be called RB. See, we're declaring it outside of a method because we want both the start method to be able to access this variable as well as the update. So that's why we declare this variable above both of these methods here. All right, so the next thing is that we need to use what is called a vector2 to determine what our velocity is going to be, meaning how fast our character can move. And velocity actually has to do with the gravity, the angular force or drag, I believe, within Unity. But in addition to that, there's it's hard to explain, but basically with the velocity is affected by multiple characteristics within your game engine, so it's not necessarily just like speed or something like that. Like velocity is determined on the fly based on collisions and all kinds of stuff. So anyway, this is going to be a vector2 type, and we're just going to call it velocity. Now, in our start method, since it's only being run one time, we need to go ahead and instantiate this variable that we created. So we're going to say that RB equals, and then there's a built-in method called getComponent. And then you have to specify what component you're actually getting that's attached to this, this character controller, character object. And again, we attached the character, the rigid body 2D to our character within Unity, and that's what caused them to fall to the floor. So we're saying get that, that class within Unity that is attached to this specific character and assign it to this RB method, or I'm sorry, variable. All right, so now what we need to do is this is going to be some kind of cryptic code, and really I don't expect you to know what any of this stuff means really, but what we're going to do is we need to go ahead and specify, hey, what when somebody presses an arrow key, that we need to go ahead and react to that. So we're saying vector2 input equals new vector2, and this is a method, so we need to say input.getAxis, which is a built-in Unity method, and we're saying get the horizontal location of this this character, because we're going to be able to move him horizontally left and right. Now vector2, if we highlight over, you can see it takes 2 arguments, so it's complaining that you need to provide the y coordinate, which means up and down. So horizontal is left and right, and that's the x-axis, and then you have the y-axis, which is up and down. And because we don't want this character to move up and down at this point, he's not going to be flying through the air, we're just going to say that he can't go up. So we're just going to close that off with a 0 there as the second argument for our vertical y-axis. All right, let me see. Are we missing something here? Okay, I see. We have an extra parenthesis, but we also have a bug here. This horizontal should actually be capitalized, and it's a built-in thing that the Unity knows about. So you pass that value in, it's just going to get its x-axis. All right, now we need to go ahead and define that velocity variable. So we're going to say the velocity equals the input dot normalized. And again, this is where like a lot of different speed factors and things like that or get brought into play. And right now we need to go ahead and define a speed variable. This thing's complaining. We need to provide a speed variable up here at the top. That's going to be something that we want to do real quick. So we're going to say it's a float, and the variable name is going to be called speed. So this speed can actually be variable. And again, when we have collisions and things like that occur, then his speed is going to increase. It's not going to be like one specific speed all the time. Different collisions and physics and stuff are going to play a part in that. But all right, so anyway, we defined our velocity as the input.normalized times speed. And the speed right now is actually 0. So I'm going to show you guys in a second what's going to happen with that. And really, it's not even 0. It's actually undefined or null. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and define a fixed method. So if you just type fixed, this is going to fixed update. If you press tab, you're going to get your IntelliSense to automatically fill out what it is that Unity thinks you're trying to do. I'm going to make that public by default. Or actually, really, if you don't say that it's public, these are basically the same thing. By saying private, it's the same thing. Now, if I said public, you could do that, but either way, it's private by default. So, or maybe I have that backwards. It could be public by default. I don't remember. It's one of the two. All right. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and define the move position. Now, this is what's actually going to move our character, and his speed can vary depending on, like I said, a lot of different things. So it's going to be grab his position, add the velocity, and then multiply that by something called time.fixed delta time. All right, so that's really all we have to do in order for this guy to move. Now, once we've done that, I want to explain something to you. Like if we go and we have our character selected, which we call him Sprite Sheet, we probably should have given him a different name, but anyway, we have him selected here, and on the right-hand side, because his speed, we made it a private variable, Unity is not going to be able to access that. So normally, if I have a public variable, I could access that within this section right here on the right-hand side. So in order for me to be able to do that, I'm going to go ahead and make this public. So I'm going to show you guys what happens if I press save, Control S to save it. And now you can see that there's actually a speed. So if I were to play this, because his speed is 0, he doesn't move. So when I press the arrows and things like that, he's not moving. Now if I give him a speed, we're just going to set it to 1. I now get movement. Now one of the problems though is that our character is going right through our background. So how do we fix that? What we need to do is we need to add a collider to our tile background. All right, so in order to do that, make sure we have our grid selected in the tile map section of that. And we're going to add a component here. So we're going to add a rigid body 2D to it. And by default, what this is going to do is it's going to add gravity to our background. So it's going to look like our guy's flying, but really what happened is our guy's staying put and the ground fell. So we don't want that to happen. So what we want to change this is from dynamic to static for this background tile map. And now we need to also add a collider so that this thing can allow our character to not walk through the mountain, because we want to make sure that that's like an area that he can't walk through. So to do that, we can look for collider, and then there's an option for a tile map collider 2D. So we're going to select that. And now you can see that it creates this, this green box and everything for us. But watch what happens. We can still walk through it. So it's not actually, it looks like it's not actually helping us. So to make this a little bit cleaner, instead of having so many different boxes, there's a way in Unity so that this can just be one basic object here instead of all these different grid slices. And we're going to need to add another component to that tile map. And this is going to be called a composite collider 2D. Now by adding that, we now have an option under the tile map collider 2D to say use by composite. And when I click that, you can see it's now all one object. So now if I play, you can see I still walk through it. So what's up with that? Well, the reason why is because we actually need to add a collider to our character. So our character right now, if we select him, he has a rigid body 2D, but he has nothing to say, hey, if I run up against something that has a collider, I need to collide with it. So he just runs right through things. So depending on the type of object you're creating, like if you want a bullet or a fireball or something to go right off the screen and go right to the background, you would clearly have it set up this way. But if you don't want your character or whatever it is to go through something that has a collider, you need to add a collider to it as well. So we're going to say box collider 2D, and we're going to add that to him. All right, so now he's still going through, but why is that? And the reason why is because we had set him, because we didn't want him to fall through the floor, to kinematic, and we need to change him back over to dynamic, so that way he actually responds to graphics. Not graphics, but graphics that have colliders on them. But in addition to that, we also need to click this box called simulated after we've changed the rigid body back to dynamic. All right, so now let's go ahead and press play. And we start running into the wall. Now we can adjust his the rotation there, because he can actually come off kilter and then he can't get back up. So it's kind of a mess. And if we don't want him to rotate around like that, what we can do is he's still going to go left and right a little bit, but we don't want him to go around in circles. So we can actually restrain his like there's these constraints down here. So we can like say freeze his Z position here. And that makes him more stable so he doesn't fall over. You can kind of climb that mountain a little bit. We also need to add a little bit more gravity to him because he's kind of floating down a little too slow. It's like he's a bird. All right, guys, so that's going to wrap up this first video. I'm going to go ahead and make some more videos on Unity. Let me know what you guys think. If you guys want me to make some more, I at least want to make a few more videos on this subject. But beyond that, just let me know if you guys are interested. My goal is actually just to be able to build some basic games. I've been wanting to do that for a long time. And I've been playing with Unity on and off for a couple of years now. All right, so guys, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate all the support that you guys offer. Every comment, like, share, all that stuff helps me. So anyway, everybody have a great night and take care. Bye.